This is the concierge, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and in this week's episode, we're getting you set for Super Bowl 59. It takes place in Louisiana, so New Orleans, but Vegas really is the center of the Super Bowl universe when it comes to parties, visitation, everything. So in this particular episode, we're going to get you all set up for where to watch the Super Bowl 2 weeks ahead of the big game, because it actually is really when you have to start booking these things to come see the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. So sit back, relax, and we're going to give you your 2025 Super Bowl guide for Las Vegas. Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and get into it right away. So I'm going to list places you can go see these, see the game, but like in past years, which you can go to the past episodes and listen more about, pricing and that kind of thing. It takes a lot of time to kind of go through all the pricing. So I'm going to give you sort of a general price range that you should be looking for and a couple little tips and tricks to watching the Super Bowl in Las Vegas without having to pay more than, for a couple of beers. So let's just start it off from the top. Really the center of the sports betting world in Las Vegas is now at Circa Sports. Circa, which is downtown, is home of the largest sportsbook. It also has the very large outdoor area called Stadium Swim. These areas are where you're going to be seeing the prime place to watch the Super Bowl. So they do sell a couple different types of packages. And again, I wanted this to reiterate from before we kind of jump into all the pricings and all the other good stuff. If you come to Las Vegas, you will be able to watch the Super Bowl literally everywhere. It will be on every single TV in every single casino all across the city. Regardless if you have a reservation or not, sometimes they put up, sheets where you can't see, but everywhere in Las Vegas will have the Super Bowl. It just depends on how comfortable your experience is going to be. So we'll start with that being said, the caveat. Let's start with Circa Sports. So Circa Sports located downtown on Fremont Street, largest sports book in the world. Same thing with their big giant pool. These will be the prime places to watch the game, but also one of the more expensive places to watch the game. So as I'm kind of just like looking through it, and again, you can go online and check and see what the layout is. If you want to buy the most affordable ticket to watch the Super Bowl for just a stadium seat, just like a regular sort of seat you would get at a stadium inside of their sports book, which is off to the sides, you'd be looking at $500 per person per seat, obviously. So that's pretty extensive just for a seat. And again, if you get two seats, because there's two of you, you're looking at about $1,000. So that's kind of where we're going to start at. So moving on from there, then you get to sort of the center areas where they have different levels and different sections that you can purchase. The average range for these areas are usually going to be between $3,000 and $6,000, depending on where your actual seat is. How many people does it seat? Typically about 6 people. And sometimes people do share sort of this space because you are able to pick per seat, but most people purchase the entire table just so that they can have the privacy of that table to themselves. It's important to note that with these prices, typically you are paying for food and beverage minimum is typically going to be what that price is. So if it says it's $6,000, then you get the food and beverage min that comes with that. So to some, it is worth it, especially if you're going to be there all day. You typically get it from, let's just say 10 or 11 o'clock until usually the end of the game. And then they'll usually have like an end time as well. But most of the time, an hour or two after the game is when they really expect you to leave. So usually you will find that anywhere online. If you look up, go to Circa Sports, you can actually pull up their venue space, which would be, I believe, the Sportsbook, Stadium Swim, and Legacy Club. Legacy Club just thrown in there, which I'm assuming they're going to have a watch party up there as well. And this is where you can actually purchase those seats. You can, I believe, put a deposit down or you can prepay in full. I believe the median sort of seat was about $7,500, and that was for like the premier seats on that level. They also have their balcony area, which I think was also like $1,500 per person as well. So it is not cheap. It is not cheap to go see the Super Bowl at Circa. I think people always kind of tell you about this, great place. It is great, but it is quite pricey if you're going to watch at that particular location. They also have the outdoor area, which is their pool. You can go up to their pool. typically they will have a big giant space laid down where they're going to add more seating. They do typically have a lot of standing room is usually what you're purchasing. And I believe that is $125 per person. And I think it does come with a complimentary cocktail. Just look on the ticket when you purchase it. Those, again, are all purchased through their website. They also have the same deal where you can purchase a cabana. You could purchase a day bed where you're able to watch the game on the big giant screen. There's usually sound. The sound is usually very loud over at Stadium Swim, which gives the best sort of viewing experience. So that's Circa. They do also have their ballrooms that are opened up, which are going to be on the third floor, which isn't sort of like in the heart of a lot of the action, but they do typically let you purchase sort of like a little space inside of their ballrooms where you're able to watch the Super Bowl. So you can have a couple of your friends sort of in that like auxiliary space of the hotel. So moving down, that is Fremont Street. So let's move back towards the Strip. A couple locations I just wanted to highlight that I think are really fun for watching these big events. Beer Park over at the Paris Hotel. Really fantastic. Really good view of the fountains, which, I mean, no one's really watching the fountains, but it's kind of cool just to be overlooking the fountains, especially when sort of like the sun is going down. Really great vibes. Really, really, really fun. I watched one of the playoff games from there, and I've also watched the World Series from the Beer Park, and I love it. You have to... I was sort of sneaky the way that I got into the space for the playoff game because they did, I believe, require a... This place, you just got to be careful with these things. They did require a 20% gratuity added onto the ticket from the get-go. So just keep that in mind if you're going. They are definitely going to have a spending minimum for each and every seat at the beer park. So usually, I would say per person, they usually aim to charge $150 to $175 minimum for really any place on the Strip. That's typical for a single seat at the bar, one person. Obviously, the more high-end places you go to or the more in demand, the prices will go up. I've seen some places that charge $350 a seat to watch the Super Bowl, which is blasphemous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I hate it. I really hate it. But it is sort of the world we live in. But I would say check those prices online. A lot of times you have to sign a food and beverage contract if it's for a very large party, usually for groups 12 or more. The sort of sweet spot for number of people to bring to Las Vegas for the Super Bowl is like 6. If you can get like 6 to 8 people, that is sort of the sweet spot where you're able to actually get a big space for usually not a lot of money if you split it evenly amongst all those people. Another kind of sneaky one was I had to arrange a bachelor party during COVID, during the Super Bowl, and I was able to figure it out. We got 2 bays at Topgolf where we're able to watch the game and be outside and be all together all at the same time. Although nowadays, I don't think they have the TVs right next to you. They do have, at Topgolf, their sort of backyard area where they do have the giant television, which that would be the only space that I'd recommend you'd want to rent just so you can make sure you're watching the game. If you actually rent a bay, it's going to be really difficult to actually watch the game while you're there. And those prices obviously are reflected for that experience. So moving back, so Beer Park, highly recommend. Really great. Love it. Another one that I really found really cool, especially this last couple of months, my dad was visiting and they were staying at the New York, me and my mom, and my dad wanted to watch the games. So we ended up going over to Tom's Watch Bar at the New York. Lots of TVs, really, really accessible. They also will probably have a spending minimum, so just keep an eye on how expensive it is. Again, usually you're going to be looking at, for like a group of 6 people, I would say, safe to say, 4,000 to 5,000 per person if you're getting a booth or like a high top or something of that nature. And again, most of these are going to be food and beverage minimum spend. So that's another one, Tom's Watch Bar at the New York. Again, go in advance. This is a really good time right now this week, the week before the Super Bowl, where you make all these reservations. I was looking at Circa's list of what they have available, and right now is probably the most available time they have for any of these seats or booths or any of that kind of thing. So now is the perfect time to do it. I also like Park MGM. I don't really like it, but Park MGM Sportsbook, again, It's okay. It's not my favorite, but if every single TV is going to be on the same game, this is definitely a good place to watch just because they do have a good amount of TVs where you're going to be able to watch the game at some point. This is much more of a bar and grill style, so it's definitely going to feel more like a bar than it is going to be like a sports book for that nature. If you wanted a traditional sports book, which I love traditional style sports books, what is a traditional sports book? Circa would be considered I would consider Circa a traditional style sports book with a hybrid with all the stadium seating. I would say a place like Mandalay Bay has a traditional sports book. Big, airy, big TVs, not really like assigned spaces, but you're able to watch the game really from anywhere there. That's going to be a very popular location. Lots of people standing. They have lots of, food and drink options around the sports book. So I don't hate that location. A couple other sports books that are going to be, super packed are going to be like the Venetian sports book. I don't recommend that. There's not a lot of places to sit. They have a lot of booths for like race and sports book. For horse racing. It's not ideal, not for that type of atmosphere. Kind of as we sort of go down the strip, I'm just sort of thinking, I mean, the Win is also sort of like a tight sports book, so it's not going to be easy and readily accessible for you to watch games from there. So going back to sort of my list that I was sort of, going through, Red Tails over at Resorts World, really fantastic option if you want a place that has lots of different things to do, activities during the Super Bowl. It's also, pretty young. It's going to be sort of a hip, young vibe. And I would say definitely you want to skew to sort of a younger demographic if you are going to Red Tails. Again, prices are going to be similar, most places around town. Caesars is probably going to be one of the more expensive places to watch the game. It just has the name recognition. They do have nice TVs. They do have a nice layout for if you are going to be sitting in a booth or one of their sort of like VIP 7-star areas. If you can get to a bar early, that'd be great. They do have a nice bar that sits and looks at the TVs. I don't know if they're going to have a spending minimum. It happens. I've gone to places thinking that I wasn't going to have a spending minimum, and then it happens. Last year, when the Super Bowl was in Las Vegas, I had my dad set up at the Bellagio High Limit Bar, which is one of the secrets. I took him to the High Limit Bar, where they don't have anything posted, and an hour and a half before the show, I want to say even an hour before the show, before the game, they come up and say, okay, well, now they're going to have a spending minimum, and it's going to be $300 per person. And we say, well, does that count for the money, the stuff that we've already spent here, which was, close to $200 already? And they said, no, it doesn't include that. And we said, well, see you later. Bye. Bellagio, really, really shady. I just want to let you know that was a really, really shady move of telling us that there was a spending minimum when it was not marked anywhere, was not listed anywhere on your website, wasn't listed anywhere on outside of the bar. And the bartender that told us that was the one that was going home who had been helping us the entire time. So really shady. Don't like that move, but I was able to sort of concierge confidential my way through that, and we were able to get some seats over at the High Limit Bar at Park MGM, which you're able to, this is sort of the key, they will usually find the volume for the game. There was no volume for the game for, 3-4 minutes. We figured it out. We're into the game. But we got there a little, early enough in time. We're able to find a couple seats. I really just needed a seat for my dad. That's sort of the biggest thing is, I'm there for my dad. It's usually 3 of us. As long as my dad has a seat, we're good to go. So found actually a couple seats, and we were all able to sit down and watch the game all together. And I think we ended up spending, and this is the thing, is that we treat the bartenders really well at the places that don't have a spending minimum. So I think they enjoyed that, and it sort of becomes a party. It's sort of like your clique of people. And I ended up going to the High Limit Bar at Park MGM. Another place that I shudder to tell you guys where these places are. But if you go over to Fountain Blue, which Fountain Blue might be a good place to watch the games, it's just sort of tight in there. I don't like sort of the way that the seating is set up, especially if it's for one game, especially if you're not actually in the sports book part. There's lots of pillars. Really hard to see, to be honest, now that I think about it. So not a huge fan of Fountain Blue Sportsbook. But a thing that I would do, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I'm going to keep it to myself. Can't tell you guys. Sorry. That's for me. That's actually, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to be able to watch the Super Bowl because I'll be working that day. I'll be doing something for where I actually work, which is in the sports betting space. So I could tell you. So what I would recommend for any of you smart people out there, if you go to the high limit bar, and again, I don't know if they're going to have it sectioned off for a private event or for private groups, but the Solo Club or the Solo Bar at Fountain Blue has many, many TVs on the inside. All will be trained to the Super Bowl. They do have an area that has like a nice like couch, which is nice. They also have a pretty decent sized bar, 2 TVs on either side of the bar to watch the game. They will typically put the volume on for that game as well. And who knows if they're going to have a spending minimum. But that is a great place to watch the game. I've sat there before. You can sit there for basically the whole day. I usually have cocktails there, but I would just end up getting beer for most of the day. And it's a really, really great little spot. And they're usually pretty chill in there, especially if you're spending money. So the Solo Bar at the Fountain Blue might be sort of a skeleton key for you to not have to spend so much money to watch the Super Bowl. Again, when you go to these places, you have to go early. You have to go like 2 hours before the game starts, at least 2, to get a seat, because everyone's going to sort of see that there's a TV there, and then they're going to plop down. Especially if you're a larger group, you're going to have to get there early for a lot of these options if you are not reserving spaces for the game. So that's my little trick. Find a high limit bar. They usually have a TV, and that's the place you want to go sit down and watch the game. So moving on, we do have the Park MGM, Caesars, Beer Park, Red Tails. I listed all of them. I did it. So again, you can go back and listen to other pods, but this is the one where I kind of gave you sort of the Cliff Notes version of places to see. Sometimes I just give you the really good ones, and then you can sort of search for it after that. But every place will be able to, show the Super Bowl. So, other note, if you are going to be doing anything else, for example, if you want to go do dinner, now is the week to book. The week of the Super Bowl is the absolute worst time to book anything in Las Vegas. Nothing is going to be available. Most people come in on Saturday, so Friday will typically be your easiest day to book a dinner reservation at one of the higher end restaurants. So any of your steakhouses, any of the high-end Italian, those places will go first, and then you get all the other things that sort of trickle down from that as well. Steakhouses will always be sold out first. Not sold out, but booked. And again, they might include a spending minimum if it has a view. Places like Prime, Giada's. I don't like it. I really hate it. I don't like that at all. But most of the time when I've gone to the Strip to watch the Super Bowl with my parents, it's always a fun time. There's a really great atmosphere in the air, especially if you're somebody who's like, why would I go to Vegas? I mean, I could watch the games back home. I totally get it. But if you want a place that has the energy of sort of being at the Super Bowl without actually having to be in New Orleans, Vegas is one of the greatest places in the world still to watch the Super Bowl. You get the juices flowing. You have all the bets that you can make, and it's really great. But with that being said, if you are going to be betting on the Super Bowl, it is very, very important that when you come into town, the lines will be extremely long starting on Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, forget about it. So if you are somebody who wants to bet on the games and you don't have an app or something of that nature, I don't recommend you bet at a kiosk. I 1000% recommend this is what you do. You go to a place that has the sheets. They will typically have a giant packet for betting the Super Bowl, giant packet. And then go through the packet, see the things that you like, whatever you want to bet on, circle it so you have it written down. And if it's a lot of stuff, I would write on a separate piece of paper because that's the way that they actually take it at the window, especially with this many bets. The numbers are imperative. So, for example, if you think, let's just say Patrick Mahomes is going to score the first touchdown, you want to make the bet. It's usually going to be written down. It'll say 33-3-4-1. That'll be kind of what the numbers looks like. That number you want to circle or write down. So when you walk up to the teller, and then you're going to say, I want to bet $20 on 32-3-3-4. Again, I'm making these numbers up, but you get it. So you want to say, I want to bet $20 on 33-4-2-4. That's how you want to do it. And it's going to pop up on the screen, and then it's going to say, this is the bet. And you say yes, and then you're good to go. Usually you have to bet at least $5. That's typically the minimum for anything on if you bet at the teller. I mean, some places a little bit bet $2, but pretty rare. But $5 is usually the minimum until whenever they tell you to stop. So again, you can bet at the kiosk, but a lot more mistakes happen there. No one's going to be there to explain how to bet when you go to the kiosk. So I highly recommend you bet at the teller. The tellers, by the way, after the game will be completely packed. So if you are leaving on Monday afternoon, then I would go ahead and just wait till like Monday morning to cash your tickets. But if you want, you can try, cashing your ticket right after the game. It typically takes usually about 15, 20 minutes, sometimes more. Sometimes it takes an hour to grade a lot of the props for them to be able to give you money. So a couple of really good places if you want to bet props are usually like Westgate Superbook. A lot of places really have to have all of these props now, but I would say Westgate Superbook, which I didn't even mention that in the places to watch the game. Westgate Superbook, one of the better places to watch the Super Bowl, sort of like the original giant sports book. They also have their ballroom that opens up, which I mean, if you're like 175 years old, have fun. But it's not my favorite place to go hang out, but a lot of locals that I know love to go to the Westgate Superbook and go to like their ballrooms. South Point is another option. They also open up their ballroom sort of like they do for the Kentucky Derby, and they usually have both sides open at their sportsbook and racebook. But again, it's sort of off the strip. I don't like to recommend things that are super off the strip because majority of my audience, you guys, are going to be on the strip or downtown. But again, bet with a live person. You have to bring cash. Do not bring your credit card. We will not take credit card at the actual teller. So that's, again, just your PSA for today. But again, bet these early. I would say look at the stuff once you get here, whether it be Friday or Saturday. Once you have what you like, go make your bet. Go do it. Do not try to bet on Sunday. That is the absolute worst day to try to bet anything in Las Vegas. One, the numbers aren't as good because, again, I work in sports betting. And two, it's going to be super busy. You're going to spend like 45 minutes in line trying to make your bet, depending on where you are. So again, try to make your bets way ahead of time when it's available. Typically the Thursday 2 weeks before the Super Bowl is when the props come out. So you guys aren't here yet. But if you're a local, that's when you can go usually find your favorite sports book that will have all of your props. So that was a super fast episode of Concierge Confidential. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It was supposed to be more of a guide, just because I want you guys to sort of get all this stuff, and I'm excited. So we'll be back next week with a lot more stories about Las Vegas. I had a really bad experience, speaking of sports books, at the Cosmopolitan Sportsbook. It's trash. It used to be good, but now it's owned by MGM, and I don't like to bash MGM on here because I used to work there, and they're a pretty good company, very corporate. But I don't know. Well, I wasn't excited about their sportsbook handling of my bet on 2 weeks ago. But regardless of that, hopefully you guys enjoyed the pod. Hopefully this was helpful for your planning your trip to Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. I did have somebody reach out on Instagram asking about what can I do in one day with my family, and maybe we'll talk about that coming up soon. Or I'll just share it to the DM that the person sent me to. So it just depends. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, everybody. Remember, if you see me out in town, which if you're coming to Vegas for the Super Bowl, you probably will, make sure to come up and say hello. But remember, keep it confidential.